she nursed a Lakota chief back to life. 1 week later, his warriors arrived with an impossible offer. She lived where the land seemed to end and the sky began. Her small wooden house stood alone near the wide northern plains, far from busy towns and crowded roads. The wind was her closest neighbor. It pushed against the walls at night and whistled through the tall grass during the day. Most people avoided this place, especially in winter, but she stayed. Her name was Anna Whitfield. She was a widow, still young enough to remember laughter clearly, but old enough to know it did not come easily anymore. Her husband had died 3 winters earlier from a fever that moved faster than any doctor could. After that, many expected her to leave. A woman alone had little protection on the frontier, but Anna stayed because this land was the last thing her husband had built with his own hands. Leaving felt like losing him all over again. Anna was not rich, but she was capable. She grew vegetables when the season allowed and stored what she could for winter. She hunted small game and traded with passing merchants for flour, coffee, and medicine. Word had spread quietly that she knew how to treat illness and injury. She had learned from her mother, who had once worked as a nurse back east. People traveling through the plains sometimes stopped at her door asking for help. Anna never turned them away. That evening, winter arrived early. The sky was already dark when Anna stepped outside to collect firewood. Snow had not yet fallen, but the air was sharp and heavy, pressing against her lungs. As she bent down, she noticed something strange near the edge of the tall grass. At first, she thought it was a fallen animal. Then she saw it move. She froze. A man lay on the ground, barely visible in the fading light. His clothes were torn, and his body was still, except for the slow rise and fall of his chest. He was Native American. Even in the dim light, she could tell he was badly hurt. Anna's first instinct was fear. Helping him could bring serious trouble. The tension between settlers and the Lakota people had been growing for years. Soldiers passed through the area often, harboring a Lakota man, especially one who looked important, could lead to punishment, or worse. She stood there, her heart pounding, while the wind tugged at her coat. She could go back inside, close the door, pretend she had seen nothing. No one would know. But then the man let out a quiet sound, more breath than voice. It was weak, human. Anna moved before she could talk herself out of it. She knelt beside him and gently touched his shoulder. His skin was cold. His breathing was shallow, uneven. There was dried blood on his side, but the wound itself was hidden under layers of cloth. Whatever had happened, it had taken all his strength. Getting him inside was not easy. He was taller and heavier than he looked. Anna struggled, slipping in the dirt, her arms shaking with effort. But inch by inch, she dragged him toward the house. She kept glancing at the open land behind her, half expecting riders to appear at any moment. Once inside, she locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. The warmth of the fire slowly filled the room. Anna removed his outer clothing carefully, doing her best not to cause pain. She cleaned the wound as gently as she could. It was serious, but not beyond hope. That small fact felt like a quiet miracle. As she worked, she noticed details that told her this was no ordinary man. His posture, even unconscious, held a kind of strength. The way his hair was braided, the markings on his clothing, these were signs of leadership. This man mattered to someone, probably to many people. That thought made her hands tremble. She worked through the night, changing bandages, checking his breathing, keeping him warm. Several times, she thought he might not make it. Each time, she forced herself to keep going. Near dawn, he opened his eyes. They were dark and steady, even through pain and confusion. He looked around slowly, taking in the room, the fire, and finally her face. Anna stepped back slightly, giving him space. She raised her hands to show she meant no harm. They did not share a language, but fear sounded the same in every tongue. His breathing quickened, and his muscles tightened as if he might try to rise. "Easy," Anna said softly, though she knew he could not understand the words. "You're safe. You're hurt." He studied her for a long moment. Then his body relaxed just a little. He closed his eyes again, exhausted. Over the next few days, Anna lived in constant tension. She kept the man hidden and left the house only when absolutely necessary. When she did, she watched the horizon closely. The man drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes he spoke in his own language, his voice low and urgent. Sometimes he simply stared at the ceiling, as if listening to things she could not hear. Anna spoke to him anyway. She told him about the weather, about the land, about her husband. Talking made the silence less heavy. It reminded her that she was still human, not just surviving. Slowly, signs of recovery appeared. His breathing steadied. The fever broke. He could sit up for short moments. When he drank water or broth, he nodded in thanks. Trust grew in quiet ways. A shared look, a calm moment. The understanding that neither of them had chosen this situation, but both were doing their best within it. One afternoon, while changing his bandages, Anna noticed him watching her closely. He lifted his hand and pointed gently toward her, then placed his hand over his heart. The gesture was simple, but the meaning was clear. "Thank you." Anna swallowed hard. She nodded back. Outside, the plain stretched endlessly, silent and watchful. Inside the small house, two lives, once strangers, once enemies by circumstance, were now connected by a single decision made on a cold evening. The days that followed moved slowly, measured by the crackle of the fire and the sound of the wind outside. Anna adjusted her life around the wounded man without fully realizing she was doing it. She woke before sunrise to check his breathing. She heated water, cleaned cloth, and prepared simple meals. Every action was careful, quiet, and filled with purpose. The man remained weak, but he was no longer slipping away. His color returned little by little. When Anna changed his bandages, she could see that the wound was healing, though it was still deep and painful. Infection had been her greatest fear, but so far it had not taken hold. Each morning she felt a small wave of relief when she saw his chest rise evenly. They could not speak to each other with words, yet communication found its way through other means. When Anna brought him water, he would touch the cup first, then look at her, waiting. When she helped him sit up, he followed her movements closely, trusting her guidance. Trust, she realized, was something that grew quietly, without announcements. At times Anna caught herself studying him. His face held strength, even in rest. There were faint lines around his eyes that suggested years of responsibility rather than age. This was not a man used to being helpless. The thought made her even more determined to help him recover his dignity along with his health. She learned his pain patterns quickly. Mornings were the worst. The cold settled deep in his body overnight, and moving caused sharp discomfort. She adjusted the blankets, warm stones by the fire, and placed them near his side to ease the stiffness. In the afternoons, when the sun filtered weakly through the window, he seemed calmer, more alert. Once, as she cleaned his wound, he let out a low sound and gripped the edge of the bed. Anna froze, afraid she had hurt him. She met his eyes and spoke softly, though she knew he did not understand the words. Her tone did the work. She slowed her movements. He released his grip and nodded once, steadying himself. Outside, the world did not pause for their fragile peace. Riders passed in the distance more than once. Anna spotted them from her window, her stomach tightening each time. She kept the curtains drawn and made sure no smoke rose higher than necessary from the chimney. Fear became a constant companion, but it no longer controlled her. There was too much at stake now. One afternoon, the man asked for something in his own language. His voice was weak, but his eyes were intent. Anna did not understand, but she listened carefully. He repeated the words and gestured toward a small pouch tied to his belt, which she had removed when treating him. She brought it to him slowly. Inside were small, carefully chosen items: herbs, a carved piece of bone, and a strip of leather marked with symbols. He touched each one gently, then looked at her. He pointed to the herbs, then to his chest, then to the wound. Understanding dawned. "These help you?" she asked quietly, though it was more for herself than for him. She recognized some of the plants, different names, different traditions, but the same purpose: healing. That realization shifted something inside her. They were not so different, she and this man. They had learned from their people, from experience, from loss. She brewed a small amount of the herbs as he indicated, combining them carefully with her own methods. The result was subtle but real. His pain eased faster that evening, and he slept more deeply than he had since arriving. When he woke, he looked at her with clear respect. He placed his hand over his heart again, then extended it toward her, palm open. She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. The contact was brief but meaningful, a promise perhaps, or simply acknowledgement. As days passed, his strength increased enough that he could stand with support. The first time he did, Anna stayed close, ready to catch him if he fell. He wavered, jaw clenched, refusing to sit back down until his legs steadied. Pride flickered across his face. Anna smiled softly, understanding the moment. She showed him the land around the house through the window, pointing out the path he had been found on, the direction of the river, the distant hills. He followed her gestures closely, mapping the world back into his mind. Sometimes he frowned, sometimes he nodded slowly, as if placing pieces together. At night he spoke more in his sleep, not in fear, but in urgency. Names, perhaps, places. Anna listened without trying to interpret. She sensed he was thinking beyond the walls of the cabin now, beyond his own recovery. He was thinking of others. One evening while the fire burned low, he surprised her by carefully forming a word in broken English.
It was rough, shaped by effort and pain, but it was clear. Anna. She looked up sharply.
You know my name? He nodded once. Then, after a pause, he tapped his chest and spoke his own name. She could not pronounce it properly, but she repeated it as best she could. His lips curved slightly at the effort. It was the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. That exchange changed everything. Names made things real, personal. This was no longer just a wounded stranger and a woman offering shelter. They were two people sharing space, time, and responsibility. Yet danger remained close. One morning, Anna found fresh tracks near her house. Horses, several of them. The prints were not old. Her heart raced as she studied the ground. She returned inside quickly, her movements tense. The man noticed at once. He followed her gaze and understood without explanation. He sat straighter, alert despite his injury. He spoke quietly, firmly, gesturing toward the back of the house, then to himself. He was ready to leave if needed, even if it cost him. No, Anna whispered, shaking her head. Not yet. She knew leaving too soon could undo all the healing. She also knew that if soldiers were near, keeping him was dangerous for both of them. The weight of the decision pressed on her chest. The riders passed without stopping. Relief came slowly, like warmth returning to numb fingers. That night neither of them slept much. The silence felt fragile, as if it could break at any moment. By the end of the week the man could walk short distances on his own. His movements were careful but controlled. His eyes held clarity now, purpose. Anna could see it plainly. He was preparing to go. On the final evening he stood near the door looking out at the darkening plains. Anna joined him, her hands folded tightly. Neither spoke. Words were no longer needed. When he turned to her, his expression was serious but calm. He reached into his pouch and removed the carved piece of bone. He placed it gently in her hand and closed her fingers around it. This was not payment. It was something deeper. Anna understood that whatever lay ahead, their lives were no longer separate stories. They had crossed a line that could not be erased. The morning he left was quiet and pale, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Anna woke before the sun, the room still dim and cold. For a moment, she listened for his breathing, the steady sound that had become part of her nights. When she realized it was gone, her chest tightened. He stood near the door, already dressed, his movements careful but strong. The wound no longer slowed him the way it had days before. He had wrapped it securely, the way someone does when they know they must rely on themselves again. Anna did not try to stop him. She knew this moment had been coming. Still, knowing did not make it easier. She handed him a small bundle of food, dried meat, bread, and a flask of water. He accepted it with a nod. For a long second they simply looked at each other. There was gratitude there, and respect, and something heavier that neither of them tried to name. He stepped outside first and paused, scanning the open land. The plains stretched wide and empty, glowing softly under the rising light. He turned back to her one last time, placed his hand over his heart, then touched the carved bone she now wore on a cord around her neck. Then he was gone. Anna stood in the doorway until the cold forced her back inside. The cabin felt larger and emptier without him. The fire crackled, the kettle steamed. Everything was exactly as it had been before he arrived, and yet nothing was the same. The days that followed were uneasy. Anna returned to her routines, but she moved differently now, more alert. Every sound outside caught her attention. Every shadow made her pause. She knew that helping him might bring consequences, though she did not yet know what shape they would take. She buried the bloody cloths deep in the ground far from the house. She scrubbed the floor and aired out the bedding. No sign remained of his stay, at least none that an outsider could see, but signs lingered all the same. A memory in the quiet, a feeling of being watched, not with threat, but with awareness. At night she found herself touching the carved bone without realizing it. It was smooth and warm from her skin. She wondered what it meant. A symbol? A promise? A reminder? She thought of him often, how he had arrived broken and silent, and how he had left steady and resolved. She wondered where he was now. Whether he had made it safely, whether his people were waiting for him, worried, searching. One afternoon, a trader stopped by unexpectedly. He asked for water and news. As Anna filled his cup, she noticed how carefully he watched her, how his eyes lingered on the land around her home. "Quiet out here," he said casually, "but folks have been talking." Anna kept her face calm.
"Talking about what?" he shrugged. "About movement."
About things changing, about Lakota bands shifting paths. Soldiers don't like surprises. After he left, Anna sat alone at the table for a long time. The words echoed in her mind. Movement. Changing paths. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The week stretched on, each day heavier than the last. Anna sensed that she was standing at the edge of something, though she could not yet see it clearly. The land felt charged like the moment before a storm. On the 6th day she found tracks near the river. Not old ones. Fresh. Horses, several of them. They did not come close to the house, but they were close enough to be seen. Anna's heart pounded as she followed them with her eyes until they disappeared into the distance. That night sleep would not come. She sat by the fire, staring into the flames, thinking of every possible outcome. Fear crept in, but so did something else. Acceptance. She had made her choice when she pulled a wounded man from the cold. Whatever followed was part of that choice. Near dawn she heard it. Horses. Not rushing, not hiding. Moving with purpose. Anna stood slowly, her hand steady despite the racing of her heart. She did not reach for anything. She did not run. She stepped toward the door and waited, the carved bone warm against her chest. Outside, the sound grew clearer. Many riders this time. The sound of horses grew louder, slow and steady, not rushed, not hidden. Anna stood just inside her door, her hand resting lightly on the wooden latch. Her heart beat hard, but her mind felt clear. Fear was there, yes, but it no longer ruled her. She opened the door. The early morning light spread across the plains, soft and gray. In front of her stood a group of riders, many more than she had ever seen at once. They formed a wide half-circle around her home, leaving space in the center. Their horses were calm, trained, and strong. The riders sat tall, watchful, but not threatening. At the front was a man she recognized at once. He looked different now. Stronger, straighter. His face was calm, his eyes clear. The wound that had nearly taken his life no longer showed weakness. This was the man as he was meant to be. the Lakota chief. Anna felt a tight knot in her chest loosen. He was alive. He had returned. For a long moment, no one spoke. The wind moved gently through the grass. The horses shifted their weight but stayed quiet. This was not a moment for sudden movement. The chief raised his hand slowly. The other riders remained still. Anna stepped forward onto the porch. She did not bow, and she did not stand tall in pride either. She stood as herself, one woman, honest and steady. The chief dismounted and walked forward alone. Each step was careful, respectful. When he reached the porch, he stopped a few feet away and placed his hand over his heart. Then he spoke. His voice was calm and strong. Anna did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Gratitude, honor, a telling of what had happened. He gestured behind him, toward the riders, toward the land, toward her. Then he surprised her by speaking again, this time slowly, carefully, in broken English. You saved my life. Anna swallowed. I helped, she said quietly. Anyone would have. He shook his head gently. Not anyone. He reached into a small pouch and removed something wrapped in cloth. When he opened it, Anna saw it was a necklace, carefully made, older than anything she owned. He held it out to her, waiting. She hesitated. Accepting it felt like crossing another line, but refusing might be an insult. She took it with both hands. The chief nodded once, satisfied. Then he spoke again to his people. His words were longer this time, filled with meaning. The riders listened closely. Some looked at Anna with curiosity, others with respect. When he finished, the chief turned back to her. My people, he said slowly, choosing each word. We remember. Anna did not know what to say. She only nodded. Then came the part she had not expected. The chief motioned for another man to step forward. This man carried a bundle of rolled leather maps and symbols carved into wood. They spread them carefully on the porch rail, pointing to areas, paths, rivers. The chief spoke while pointing. He explained in simple phrases, using gestures when words failed. Safe paths. Protected land. No harm. Anna listened, confused, but focused. Slowly, understanding formed. They were offering her protection, not ownership, not control. Protection. His people would watch over this area. No one would disturb her land. No one would trouble her home. In return, she would allow safe passage through nearby paths when needed. No spying, no warning soldiers. Just silence and respect.
It was an impossible offer.
No one like her received such things. A lone widow. A settler woman on the edge of the plains. This kind of agreement did not exist on paper. It would never be written down. It would never be recognized by officials. But it was real. Anna felt the weight of it settle over her. Accepting could make her a target. Refusing could be seen as rejection of a deep honor. She thought of the night she had found him bleeding in the grass. Of the choice she had made without knowing where it would bleed. She met the chief's eyes. I won't betray you, she said simply, and I won't ask for more than I need. The chief smiled faintly. He placed his hand over his heart again. That is enough. The riders relaxed slightly. The tension eased, though it did not disappear completely. This was a serious promise, one that would shape lives beyond this moment. Before leaving, the chief spoke one last time. He pointed to Anna, then to the horizon.
If danger comes, he said, we will know. Anna nodded. She believed him.
The riders mounted their horses. One by one they turned away, their movement smooth and quiet. The chief was the last to go. Before riding off, he looked back once more and raised his hand. Then they were gone. The plains returned to silence. Anna stood on her porch long after the dust settled. The world felt larger now, heavier with meaning. She knew her life would never return to what it had been before. She stepped back inside and closed the door gently. From that day on, travelers noticed something strange about the land near her home. Trouble seemed to pass it by. Paths shifted. Conflicts moved elsewhere. No one ever wrote down why. Life did not change all at once after that morning. It changed slowly, like the turning of seasons. At first, Anna half expected the world to rush back in with noise and danger, as it always had before. But days passed, and then weeks, and nothing happened. The land around her home felt different, not quieter, just steadier. Travelers still came through, but fewer stopped. Soldiers passed at a distance, never close enough to ask questions. Once or twice, Anna noticed riders far off on the horizon, watching. They never approached. They never needed to. She understood then that the promise made on her porch had not been empty. Anna continued her work as she always had. She treated the sick when they came. She traded for supplies. She tended her small garden and prepared for winter. From the outside, her life looked unchanged, but inside, something had settled into place. She no longer felt alone in the same way. Sometimes she found small signs left near the edge of her land. A bundle of dried herbs placed carefully on a stone, a carved mark on a tree, faint but clear. They were never obvious. They were not meant to be seen by everyone, only by her. She never spoke of the agreement. Not to traders, not to passing families. Silence was part of the promise, and silence, she had learned, could be powerful. Years passed. The plains continued to change. New roads formed farther east. Settlements grew and then struggled. Conflicts flared and faded. Through it all, Anna's land remained untouched. When danger moved through nearby areas, it curved around her home like water around stone. People noticed, but no one could explain it. As Anna grew older, her hands became slower, her steps more careful. She taught what she knew to a young girl who stayed with her one summer, showing her how to clean wounds, how to listen more than she spoke, how to see people instead of sides.
"Kindness travels," Anna told her once. "You don't always see where it goes, but it doesn't disappear." On quiet evenings, Anna sometimes sat on her porch and looked out at the horizon.
She wondered about the chief. She never saw him again. Not up close. But she heard things, quietly. Stories passed between traders. A leader who valued balance. A man who avoided needless harm. A people who remembered their debts.
She touched the carved bone at her chest, worn smooth with time.
When Anna passed away, it was peaceful. She was buried near her home, beneath the wide sky she had loved. There was no marker to explain her story, just a simple stone with her name. Years later, long after her cabin had fallen into the earth, elders still told a quiet story among their people, about a woman who chose compassion over fear, about a life saved and a promise kept. History never recorded her name.